Good morning. Here's what you missed over the last 12 hours. You had 10 videos worth catching up on, covering everything from Theo's passionate case for open sourcing all business code to Jensen Huang defending Nvidia's competitive moat, plus some fascinating developments in AI tooling and a sobering look at what's happening to affordable cars. Let's start with the big idea that got Theo absolutely fired up. He's arguing that every company should open source their code, and he was genuinely evangelical about this, even putting his kids' college money behind the thesis. His core insight is that AI is fundamentally changing the game. While closed-source software faces new risks from AI agents that can easily clone functionality, open source creates stickier products through community customization. Theo walked through some compelling numbers from his own T3 code project: 45,000 signups, 16,000 weekly users. But here's what blew him away: 1,500 forks, meaning 10% of users are actively customizing the product. He highlighted Emmanuel's extensive fork called DP Code that added terminal multiplexing, multiple chats, queuing systems, and mobile support. Emmanuel described T3 code as a skeleton to play with and build from, which perfectly captures how users treat it as building blocks rather than a finished product. Theo connected this to Mitchell Hashimoto's recent article about the building block economy. Hashimoto noted that while Ghosty took 18 months to reach 1 million daily users, libghosty, its terminal library component, hit multiple millions in just 2 months. The insight is that AI prefers assembling high-quality, well-documented components rather than building from scratch. Theo's biggest idea is something he calls Patch MD, a system where customizations are tracked both in code and in plain English describing the intent of each change. When updates arrive, AI would try to apply changes cleanly, attempt resolution if there are conflicts, or rebuild features from the patch MD description on the latest codebase. He envisions self-forking, self-customizing, and self-healing software where customers can have 90% of their software forked while still receiving updates. Speaking of AI transforming development, SmartyRBX was equally passionate but frustrated with his fellow Roblox developers who are living under a rock when it comes to AI adoption. He's seeing AI dramatically increase developer throughput, especially in coding, making solo developers competitive with entire teams. The economics are stark. What used to cost $1,000 plus monthly for a programmer now costs $200 for a Claude subscription, often with higher throughput if used correctly. But here's what got him genuinely excited. Through his Discord server, Smarty Devs, with over 20,000 developers, he discovered most are barely using AI beyond basic ChatGPT bug fixes. He was incredulous about developers still doing one prompt at a time, copy-paste scripts when AI agents like Claude Code and Codex can now edit scripts, create files, and integrate directly with Roblox Studio through MCP servers. SmartyRBX shared his own AI-assisted games, Wood, Steal a Bus, Vote to Ruin the Server, and his upcoming pirate game where basically everything was made with AI. He's also experimenting with Apple Watch app development, showing how AI agents free up time to explore new areas. His prediction is that while individual coding becomes easier, this raises the overall bar for game quality. Players will expect better experiences as effects, feedback, and integrated core loops become easier to implement. Maximilian Schwarzmuller was observing something fascinating: the convergence of development tools into what he calls agentic engineering apps. He showed how Cursor, Codex, Cloud Code, and others now look virtually identical, all featuring the same basic layout with agent interfaces. Even V's Code is moving in this direction with an upcoming Agents mode in their Insiders program. What struck him was how this new paradigm allows managing multiple agents across multiple projects in a single application. These tools are closing the feedback loop, orchestrating multiple agents while having live previews where you can click elements or add comments for AI feedback. He noted that traditional IDE features are becoming less important. File trees now show only changes rather than full project views because, as he put it, who cares about the files if the agent is working on them? Built-in debuggers are disappearing, and unique features are emerging like Codex's automations, AI routines that can execute prompts on schedules for code analysis or commit reviews. Schwarzmuller admitted he's staying somewhat anchored to traditional workflows, preferring to keep projects open in VS Code while using these new tools via terminal, but acknowledged that old-school IDEs will become less important over time. On a related note about AI sovereignty, Manolo Remedi was genuinely passionate about breaking free from what he calls corporate AI spying. He was clearly frustrated with how companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google are trapping users in dependency while harvesting their data. His solution involves several tools of increasing complexity. Starting with LM Studio, a free app for running AI models locally, he explained that individuals don't need superintelligence, they need knowledge assistance. Since we are the intelligent part, local models running on your machine are sufficient for tasks like email writing, where you provide the intelligence while AI helps with grammar and clarity. His current obsession is combining Obsidian with Hermes AI. He records daily, think-aloud sessions while walking his dog, then has AI transcribe and analyze them. This content gets stored in Obsidian, but here's the clever part. He makes the Hermes folder his Obsidian vault, giving complete transparency into the AI's identity documents, knowledge base, and protocols. You can see and edit everything, including the AI's sole document that defines its personality. For model selection, he uses Gemma 4, 26 billion parameters, for general work, and QN 3.5, 35 billion parameters, for coding, arguing that less powerful models remind you not to trust AI blindly, while powerful models create false confidence. He challenges the common wisdom of always using the most powerful AI available, suggesting the overall system intelligence is higher with smaller models built on high-quality, personalized data. And speaking of AI agents, Dotta was absolutely buzzing about Paperclip, his open-source agent orchestrator for creating what he calls zero-human companies. During the recording, he got genuinely excited discovering they'd crossed 50,000 GitHub stars live. The core concept is creating org charts of agents you can manage and configure according to your preferences. His demonstration involved celebrating their GitHub milestone not with just a tweet, but by assigning his CEO agent to hire a video writer and have them write a Remotion video celebrating 40,000 stars. The CEO automatically hired a video writer agent, gave it Remotion skills, and produced a polished, on-brand animated video with real stats in about 5 minutes. What's sophisticated is the organizational learning aspect. As agents repeatedly receive similar feedback, this creates opportunities to develop company-specific skills, incorporating branding guides and preferences. The system includes quality assurance through QA agents with browser automation skills, approval workflows, and routines for recurring tasks. Dotta emphasized this isn't just a coding tool, but designed for entire businesses' marketing, sales, finance operations. He provided practical advice about building organizations gradually, agent by agent, using cheaper models like QN 2.5 for less critical agents, while reserving expensive frontier models for high-intelligence tasks like CEO roles. Shifting to policy concerns, the Lunjuk Journal presenter was clearly agitated about new federal legislation that would require age verification on all operating systems. House Bill H.R. 8250, introduced by Representatives Josh Gothamer and Elise Stefanik, represents a significant escalation from state-level to federal mandates. This isn't age attestation or age estimation. It's actual identity verification using driver's licenses and legal documents. What frustrated him was his inability to get the full bill text despite reaching out to both representatives. He's been tracking OS responses through a Does It Age Verify GitHub page. Ubuntu indicates they'll probably comply, Pop! OS dislikes it but will follow laws, Fedora Linux likes Apple's age verification API, while Amory Linux, Slackware, and Devuan have stated they think all age verification is terrible and won't implement it. His investigation into whether companies like Meta were coordinating these bills found no common donors or lobbying connections. He concluded most politicians are true believers who genuinely think they're helping children. The fact that Michigan withdrew their similar bill after public pushback proves these politicians can be educated about the problems, but federal law would override all state considerations. Moving to industry analysis, Jensen Huang was confident and occasionally animated when defending Nvidia's position in Dwarkesh Patel's interview. He pushed back against concerns about software commoditization, framing Nvidia's business as transforming electrons to tokens, a process requiring immense artistry that won't be easily commoditized. On supply chain advantages, Huang detailed how Nvidia's massive purchase commitments, potentially $250 billion according to SemiAnalysis, create upstream capacity. He personally educates supply chain partners about AI's trajectory, enabling them to make large investments because they trust Nvidia's downstream demand. When discussing competition with TPUs, he distinguished between Nvidia's accelerated computing platform versus narrow tensor processing units, arguing that AI requires flexibility for new architectures and attention mechanisms. On the contentious China topic, Huang argued that export controls are counterproductive because China has abundant energy, manufacturing capacity, and 50% of the world's AI researchers. He warned that excluding China could lead to a bifurcated ecosystem where Chinese open-source models optimize for non-American hardware, potentially weakening American technology leadership. He pushed back against analogies comparing AI chips to nuclear weapons, expressing concern that overly restrictive policies could cause the U.S. to concede the second-largest tech market globally. On a completely different note, the father-son duo at CarEdge delivered some sobering news about what's happened to car affordability. Zach was genuinely incredulous presenting the data. A 1973 Honda Civic cost $2,100, $15,000 inflation-adjusted, versus today's $28,000 starting price. The average new car transaction price hit $49,275 in March 2026, requiring 7 months of median income versus 4 months historically. They documented the death of affordable models. Honda Fit, Ford Fiesta, Toyota Yaris, Chevy Malibu all discontinued, leaving only 4 models under $30,000. Dad explained the manufacturer perspective. Companies discovered greater profits in expensive vehicles with $15,000 to $5,000 profit margins versus $5,000 for economy cars. Government regulations added costs through mandatory safety features, and they discussed the human impact through a New York Times story about Yasmin, a Little Caesars manager who saved $9,000 for a 2010 GMC Terrain that suffered engine failure twice, leaving her dependent on her boyfriend for transportation. Dad characterized car dependence as potentially life-threatening in America's automotive infrastructure. Their solution centers on Chinese competition. Multiple sub-$25,000 Chinese vehicles exist globally, but face import restrictions in America. These aren't junk cars but competitive electric and hybrid vehicles from BYD, Geely, and Chery selling millions in Europe, South America, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. For something more philosophical, Yara Shahidi was thoughtful and reflective in her TED conversation about finding purpose and practicing optimism. She shared how reading James Baldwin at 13 changed her life, but then facing the recurring question, are you sure about that? When trying to balance acting and education. In 2018, starting Harvard while filming Grownish, she was told by advisors that acting and education couldn't coexist symbiotically. She almost let those 5 words stop her, but ultimately built a life honoring her interests from the Glockenspiel to Octavia Butler. Her philosophy centers on optimism as active practice rather than naive positivity. Working with only 0.98 of the world's knowledge, her calculation involving general GPA plus street smarts divided by all of the world's knowledge, she finds inspiration in how little anyone actually knows. For practical tools, she and her mother developed a hard yes list, tracking things that bring joy, from colors and foods to conversations and experiences. She's intentionally embracing being bad at things, sparked by a devastating cartwheel attempt during an interview that made her cry from embarrassment. This prompted her very intentional pursuit of being bad and creating situations to be an amateur, opening doors she'd preemptively closed and filling her life with joyful hobbies like watercoloring and crocheting. She's never completed a scarf, but has so many squares. Finally, wrapping up with some technical wisdom, the modern software engineering presenter took a measured, experienced stance on why 100% test coverage is mostly pointless. While acknowledging that zero coverage is problematic and automated testing is valuable, he explained how pursuing coverage metrics drives teams toward ineffective testing strategies. His most shocking example was a banking client who proudly claimed 100% test coverage, but had literally zero assertions in their tests. They simply launched the main method and verified no exceptions were thrown. He emphasized that you get what you measure. Focusing on coverage numbers naturally leads teams toward end-to-end tests that cover large portions of code quickly, but provide poor isolation when debugging failures. Instead, he suggested focusing on writing good tests that provide fast feedback and genuine confidence, tracking coverage trends over time rather than targeting specific percentages. He introduced two fascinating related concepts: mutation testing, where production code is deliberately changed to verify tests actually break, revealing whether tests are effective despite having coverage, and property testing, which auto-generates multiple inputs based on parameter types instead of manually writing test cases. The key insight is that having test coverage isn't necessarily good. What matters is whether those tests provide real value and meaningful feedback about system functionality. That covers the highlights from your 12-hour window. The common thread seems to be this tension between automation and human control, whether it's Theo's vision of self-healing open source, the new generation of AI-powered development environments, or the ongoing debates about sovereignty versus convenience in our tools. Quite a lot to process.